We're now live, Chair.
Thank you. So welcome everybody to the Cabinet Markets Working Party. I will try, if you don't mind, to get through this meeting as quickly as we can, because I'm sure everybody is very hot and bothered. Can I first, and also this is my first chairing of this meeting. So moving quickly onto the agenda then, we have no apologies, I think he said, Sophie.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay. Oh, not quite sure what's happening there. It looks like Councillor Blackburn is now in twice.
Hi, Chair. No, that's me. For some reason, I know Councillor Blackburn looks different. For some reason, whenever I sign in, my name comes up as Howard. So let me just change that for you.
Okay, thank you. I was expecting Councillor Megan Swift, but I do have Councillor Scullion who can attend as a substitute if she doesn't in fact appear, which at the moment she hasn't done. It's a bit difficult if we haven't even got an apology though, so I think I'll just leave it for now. And we are quorate after all. So just moving on with the agenda then, I'll just remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they might have in relation to the items included on this agenda. Don't know if anybody wants to do that or has to do that at this stage. No, okay. And admission of the public. This meeting is open to the public, except that under section 100A (4) of the Local Government Act 1972, it is recommended that the public be excluded for item number 9, paragraph 3. On the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the stated paragraph of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act, namely information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. So we'll be dealing with that obviously at the end, and the live stream will then be switched off. So obviously item 4 is minutes of the meeting on the 17th of February. I wasn't there, I wasn't chair, so I won't be able to sign them off. But presumably, has anybody got anything that they wanted to say about those before we move on? Okay. Right, so item number 5 is the Brickhouse Town Investment Plan project update. So who is covering this for us?
It's Duncan Cooper here. I'm project manager for the Brickhouse Town Deal projects, and I'm generally located in major projects as well. So I'm going to cover this. We've been assisted in this task by consultants Turner & Townsend, and I've taken certain slides that they used in a previous presentation to the board, the Town Deal board. I'm going to run through those. Before I do that though, due to where we were the last time I reported to this body, I think I'll give a little bit of a preamble. Last time I was describing the task that was going to be done with regard to assessing where would be the best site for a revitalised Brickhouse market, as it did not necessarily have to go on the existing site. I mean, there was the opportunity maybe to move to another site which would save a temporary relocation of the stalls whilst work was done there. Consultants helping others have been Turner & Townsend. They've also brought in sub-consultants, Bond Bryan, who've got a specialisation in markets. So they did an assessment of a number of sites in the town centre. This has been useful when we'll sort of talk about the housing element of this scheme a little bit later. However, after assessing the sites, looking at changes in levels, hence the cost that would be involved in making that level 4 market, and indeed consulting with the market stall holders themselves, we've decided that the location that they're currently at, up against the canal, is probably the best one for them, really. So that's why last time I was talking about looking at the sites, but when I get into this presentation, it's the existing site. So let's see if I can share my screen. and I'll run through the presentation. Okay, can everybody see that?
I can certainly see it.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm displaying it in the best way, but like I say, Turning Townsend has been helping us with the market. So I'll skip through. We are only at concept design stage. If anybody's familiar with Rebus stages, we're only at Rebus stage 2. Next stage will be detailed design, but we've had some plans drawn up which have been useful for public consultation. So there's a concept design of the revitalized market. Features of the revised design would be that they're trying to produce a more welcoming site with clear visibility that draws people in. That's why the entranceway has got a lot of glass in it and it's quite open. But at the same time, an issue with the existing market has been security. So the design aims to address this by having a perimeter that can be closed such that when the market is not in use, you're securing it from intruders utilizing it for their own aims. Also, the current site doesn't have toilets or storage, and they're things that would be incorporated in the new design. The current market doesn't really seem to make the most of its canal side location. So the new design would try and do this by having physical and visual connections through to the canal side. So people are encouraged to use the towpath, and indeed people on the towpath can get through to the market. Currently, we're just thinking of one kind of aperture that you'd get through, and sort of some large viewing windows that we have to see, so as not to compromise the security too much. And the aim would be to have a diverse and flexible market that can accommodate a range of traders and events with extended opening hours, so it's used more than it currently is. We've done a public consultation. Now, the public consultation was on the overall town deal programme that the market revitalisation fits within. There are actually 5 projects. However, we did this public consultation at the market itself. We took 2 of the stands. So we certainly had a lot of customer interest in what the changes to the market were proposed to be. There's a couple of shots of the consultation that was done on a Saturday. It was very well attended all through the day. Now, this is a bit of feedback that we got, which, like I say, kind of covers all of them, but some of it's specific to the market itself. Like I said, we really did have a very good turnout to the event, with a wide variety of people viewing the plans and providing their feedback. The feedback that was not got on the day, people have been forwarded to the Town Deal website, so they can be provided there. What you see there with the picture is kind of feedback that was gathered on the day. We wanted to know what parts of the town centre people were interested and why, so there was the opportunity for them to kind of draw a picture of what they were interested in, add a note and pin it to a map. With regard to the plans of the market were shown, got a very positive response, and it's included from the market traders, who are clearly well placed to come and talk to us. Security, like I've already mentioned, was noted as an issue, because I believe there's some current antisocial issues with the site. There are other comments to do with public realm projects, because this will also go on in the town centre. Parking was an issue that was mentioned, not particularly to do with the market, but because some of the pedestrianisations will impinge upon the parking within the town centre. And also, one of the final points there is scepticism from residents about whether the proposals would happen. So I think people liked the proposals, but I don't know if they weren't sure about us having the funding or not. The funding is pretty secure. I'll go through that a little bit later, so that shouldn't really be an issue. What we have found as we've continued to develop this project is that there was cause for project adjustment. Initially, there was what was called a TIP, a Town Investment Plan, was submitted to the Department of Levelling Up. It was MHCLG back then, setting out what the projects in Brickhouse were likely to be, what their outputs were likely to be, and what the costs of them were likely to be. Having to do that at such a very early stage, well, we're going back more than a year now, we've discovered that some of the things put in that document were not as viable as they might be, and also there might be a rationale for redistributing the funds that we've got differently between the projects. So we've had the opportunity to do this with a project adjustment. And now that we've further developed the projects, we've been working through the business cases, now seems a good time to do that. So the Town Deal Board and the accountable body, which is the council, approved the project adjustments back in the 14th of June. They were submitted to the Department of Levelling Up, Homes and Communities, back on the 15th of June. We've been led to believe that the Minister for Levelling Up was interested to look at each of the project adjustments. There have been some kind of changes there with regard to who the minister is, so if that's still the way it's being done or not, but it's certainly in the hands of the officers of the Department of Levelling Up. We are then expecting that the outputs and funding will be formally amended by DLUP. At the same time as this has been going on, we've been working on finalising the business cases, which also need to be submitted to DLUP, where we're getting an independent assessor support to advise the board. That is due imminently, frankly. I'm going to be talking to senior officers with regard to getting the accountable bodies approval this week, and then there's a Town Deal board meeting in a week, so next Tuesday, to approve the business case for the market and indeed for the other 4 business cases. And we then need to submit the summary documents to Department of Levelling Up by the 31st of this month. Then the actual funding to deliver these projects should be released. DLUP don't give themselves a deadline for doing this, but I've been led to believe that we're expecting that around about September of this year. So as I've alluded to, there's been some changes to the plans for the market to make it more viable and to make sure that the investment is focusing on the market itself. There had been a proposal in the TIP, in the original Town Investment Plan, to have a housing development above a new market hall and maybe have some startup units in between. Looking at this more critically, as we've now been doing, it's been found that such a mixed-use development would not really be suited to either of the main uses there. A market wouldn't sit nicely with residential, and residential wouldn't sit nicely with the market on such a small site as we have here. As I mentioned, a number of sites were considered for a relocation of the market. One of the ones that was looked at that actually might be a potential for where the housing element that was considered could go would be the Daisy Street car park. It's larger than the Ship Street where the market is, so you can accommodate a greater amount of development. That gets developers more interested and makes it much more viable. So whereas with this scheme, the market scheme, the others, what we're talking about is external funding going in to enable them to come forward. If we were to do the housing on a more viable site, we don't need to provide that external funding support, and we can use all the market revitalisation funding for the market itself. As I mentioned, there was the consideration of units between the levels of the market and the residential. They would be startup units, so they would be gone from the proposal as well. Now, these were all discussed with the Town Deal Board, and the result was that the board were willing to support the adjustment. The impacts on outputs is that previously there were going to be these 24 residential properties, there were going to be the 4 startup units, and there was going to be 573 square metres of mixed-use development building. What we're now talking about is an offset. It's not simply that we're losing them, we are gaining something by this project adjustment, because we'll be able to use a larger proportion of the site. We won't be having service towers for the residential above. We can increase the number of market stalls from 24 to 40. And for the event space, because the middle of the market can use as event spaces as well, that would increase from 270 square metres to 320 square metres. So that pretty much concludes the run through of where we are now with this project. As I say, the next step will be to submit the business cases to the Town Deal Board, get their approval, submit summaries to Department of Levelling Up by the end of next week. We'll then be doing some bridging works to further development this project before we get the assignment of the cash, as I say, expected in September of this year.
Okay, thank you very much. I've already seen Councillor Blackborough's got his hand up.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you. My apologies for being slightly late. I have seen this presentation anyway. So two things. First of all, I need to declare my interest as a member of the Town Deal Board, and secondly, declare my interest as a director of the Brickhouse bid. But I think actually what we've seen in front of us are absolutely amazing. We've been speaking to loads of residents in Brickhouse, and everyone's absolutely delighted with the plans. So I think it's a real big thanks to Duncan and his team and Turner for coming up with some exciting plans. Yes, it has gone slightly over budget, which we expected, but it's still going to actually bring a lot of investment into the town and revitalise the town centre. So I think that's absolutely amazing. One thing I think we discussed in the Town Deal Board was about the Daisy Street car park, and not actually mentioning about the Daisy Street car park. You're going to go away and actually sort of take reference out of specifically for that, because actually at the moment residents are not aware that we are going to potentially dispose of the site. So I think that's just one of the comments I need to make on that. But thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? I'm not seeing any. I'd just like to say that the way I've always arrived at Brickhouse Market has been along the canal, and so I'm delighted that it's staying where it is. And I'd probably never have found it if it hadn't happened to be there. So, and I think but as you also mentioned, once you go in it, you have no idea you're next to the canal. So I think it will just be a really big improvement, and I think it looks really good. So although that's my only experience, most of my experience of Brickhouse is cycling to it and going to the market and maybe one or two other shops and cycling away again. But it looks like it's going to be a real boon to the town. The only thing I was a bit surprised about was it was quite a large increase in units that you're going to have, and you're still confident that the town board's confident that you can fill that extra number of units.
From the advice that we've had thus far, like I said, we brought Bon Brian in to advise, particularly on the markets. Yes, that does seem to be the case. And of course, the more stalls you have, if you can fill them, the more viable the market becomes, because you get more income, which balances the maintenance costs and the running costs. And also, it should be seen in the context of a wider town centre refurbishment. The wider aims of the Brickhouse Town Deal is to increase footfall and increase dwell time Now, certainly that would apply to the more conventional commercial areas, but certainly it's going to apply to the market as well. So there's going to be more custom, hence you would think there would be more potential for market traders on the site as well. As well as the number of stalls, we are very much hoping that it will be open more days a week than it currently is to make the most of the investment that's going to be taking place.
Yeah, that would be good. So then I've got Councillor Audrey Smith and then John Walker, the Markets Manager.
Thank you. Just to say that compromise between security and design and making it appealing, I just think we've got the story of Sowerby Bridge to learn from. So I don't know. I suppose it just make sure that is there any way of making it even more open to the canal? I mean, maybe with more, more sort of views to the canal, or not, because it looks like the view to the canal is on the upper level. Is that right?
Well, the level of the market is actually higher than the canal towpath. So with regard to the access, new access on the side, there will have to be steps there down to the towpath. I think there's also going to be two seating areas which will correspond to the large windows through, so you can view the canal and vice versa. And also we're considering a number of, like a window behind each of the stalls. We're still at the concept design stage, and there's some thoughts as to whether, well, do the stall holders want that, or will they put stock up against it so there's no point? But the feedback that we got from the consultation was that they would quite like that kind of thing. So there would be much more of a link, visual and pedestrian, from the canal side to the market than there is now. But yeah, you're quite right. It do seem to be at a high level, but it's not. It's because the market site is actually higher.
Sorry, John.
Well, I'd just like to clarify that really we're not increasing stall provision. We're actually decreasing stall provision, because Brickhouse Market is exceedingly very large market that's potentially underoccupied at the moment, and this would consolidate it into one space. It would accommodate larger occupancy levels than we measure ourselves against now, because obviously we're 60% occupied on a Saturday or over 70 stalls, whereas that would become 100% occupied and a spill out into Thornton Square with a bit of luck. So we will be looking at how we also utilise the Thornton Square area as we progress with the market. But we would be looking at, and I've already discussed this with two traders today about evening trading. So there is scope there to drive out the antisocial behaviour to an extent just by evening trading alone, really. But we have to be mindful that we have to hit budgets wherever possible.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Bradbury?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Sorry for coming back in, but it's just an important element that I've suddenly thought about over the last few weeks, and I think it will be extremely a really good investment if we were to include CCTV as well. I suddenly realised actually we don't have that at the moment, because one observation is actually on a regular basis the market does get a graffiti on the canal side. And whilst the Calderdale teams are excellent at being able to remove the graffiti, actually you can still see the graffiti because they only just do where they've sprayed it. So sort of thinking about it and how do we overcome that, and actually possibly the element of CCTV to actually for security and equally to hopefully catch people when they do graffiti and take some action. Just some additional thoughts over the last few weeks I've had.
Yes, from my experience of town boards, I don't know how easy it might be now to incorporate that in the town board plan as opposed to having to look at some other way. But I mean, obviously you've raised it now and it can be discussed, and I don't think probably something to be dealt with outside here as well. I'm not sure, but yes, it's a good point. Thank you. So are there any more points or questions on that item? No? Okay, thank you. So I think, Duncan, do you need to stay any longer, or? I don't think you do.
No,
do you?
if it's okay by you, I'll take my leave.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Right, okay, so next we have the finance update. Paul Greenwood, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. Hopefully the report is fairly self-explanatory, but I'd just like to run through a few points, if I may. The report details the first of 3 revenue monitors that will be included in the Council's overall revenue monitor and reported to Cabinet during the year in line with the Council's constitution. The report contains the forecast budget pressure at this point of 171,000, which is largely based on the revenue outturn for the previous financial year. Obviously, it's very early in the financial year to get any significant trends of particular income, and therefore it is largely based on the outturn for last year. There are a number of factors that the working group will be aware of that can impact on the service control budget in a significant way. The continuing impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the trading activity, and also the ability of the service to achieve the savings agreed by Cabinet to bring the outturn back into line with the budget in 22-3 onwards. As a working group will probably be aware, a significant proportion of the budget relates to the indoor borough market and Tomedin market halls, and there's a requirement to achieve income in the region of £750,000 per annum in line with the budget, which I think the overall income target for the market service is around about £900,000, 900k a million. So the indoor markets account for obviously a significant proportion of that investment. The next report to the working group will provide a more detailed financial update, particularly in relation to the actions that are detailed in the report to achieve a balanced budget in future years. As stated in the report, the actions have all been implemented. The car boot sales ceased. A restructure has been put in place. On all the actions that's detailed in the report, there are 5 or 6 actions in there. They have all been actioned on completed. What we need to do, Chair, is assess how that will impact on the budget throughout the year, because regardless of any action that we take during a year, it can be offset by the impact on the trading activity and our ability to both retain and recruit new tenants to all of the markets, including the outdoor and indoor markets. The overall budget pressure detailed in the report is obviously the responsibility of the service to manage in the first instance, and on the back of that, it's also the responsibility of the Regeneration and Strategy Directorate. And if there is a budget pressure at the end of the year, then it will be reported within the overall budget position for the Regen and Strategy that will be reported to Cabinet at the end of the financial year 22-23. So in summary, we are forecasting a budget pressure at this point in the year. It could be significantly impacted for the reasons I've mentioned in the report, and the next report will contain, as I've mentioned, a more detailed financial update, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, this is more just a general question, but I was just wondering about the kind of methods through which we get income from the markets. Is it purely rent, or is there other kind of incomes coming in from the markets?
The main of the markets is from both the indoor and outdoor markets. There are other activities that generate smaller income streams, but as I've mentioned, Councillor, the indoor markets account for 3/4 of the overall income for the market, and the outdoor markets, broadly speaking, account for the rest. But there are a few other income streams as well.
Are there any more questions from anyone? So if I can just say then, I mean, I appreciate it's really early in the year, but John, do you have any feel for how things are going at all yet? Because I mean, obviously we haven't got over COVID. It's still affecting people. People are isolating because of it. They're off work, and there are all sorts of impacts it's still having. So do you have any feel for how things are going? And also we've had the recruitment campaigns, which are referred to later on. So is there anything you'd want to say about that?
I think the fact being is that we have got to be mindful that there are things outside of the service's control that we have no influence over whatsoever. And I think you witnessed some of this in Todmorden with the 30 weeks of roadworks, which are having an adverse effect really on open market occupancy at this moment in time. I think we have to be mindful that as we step into the two town deals, the future high streets, two future high street schemes, these could have further potential impacts on income as we progress through the schemes, because you know yourself, Councillor Dacker, you mean there's some big ambitions for Todmorden, but that means a relocation of that market, and you will tend to lose traders during relocations, as is the case with both Brickhouse and Elland, because you're going to have to put them in a different spot to move them back to the original spot when you've done it. So there will be impacts. I think members need to be mindful that we may not hit targets as we're stepping through the refurbishment programs.
Okay. I suppose it may also be that when we get through all of that and we've got some idea what's going on, it either before or then it might be time to look at the income targets and review them for the future. Because if we have no prospect of we have put targets that we never meet, then we maybe need to think again about the targets. But I don't think maybe now is not the right time. Sorry, Paul.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point, Chair. I think we've mentioned it in the past that the income target for the service, the budget revenue income target, broadly allows for 100% occupancy across all activities, which in any trading environment, even in where the trading activity is buoyant, it would be difficult to achieve 100%. And I think you're absolutely right that as John said there, as we go through all the work that's going to be carried out throughout the borough anyway, I think we do need to look at what realistically the markets can achieve, beyond the current position.
Yes, because I mean that they have importance to us, which is not merely financial, don't they? Yes. We have market towns, and so they have a social value as well. So yeah. Okay, Councillor Blackburn and then Councillor Smith.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think it has been mentioned in the past, and actually what we've got to remember, actually these markets do make a lot of money. And I think the targets are just out of balance. And I think it's been mentioned throughout the years. And I think it will be really good to be realistic about what the targets actually are. So I really would like to back that one up, because actually they are successful. The markets in the borough are successful, and certainly the Brickhouse over the last few years since it got brought back into under John's jurisdiction has been excellent. He's vastly improved the Brickhouse market in the work in the short space of time. So actually, I think we need to be realistic with targets to ensure that actually we're not looking at budgets that we can't reach.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Smith.
Can I just ask you to explain the markets monitoring? The figure in the first column, if it's not got a minus, that means what?
I'll just bear with me. Yeah. Right, if you look at the appendix, so if we take, do you want me to share, is it best if I share the screen and then?
Yeah, please.
If I can, I'm not just sure.
I've got it. I mean, I can just.
Okay. Yeah, if the working group can look at the appendix, if we take the borough market, which is the second line down in the appendix, where the budget is a minus figure of 572,000. So that reflects the fact that the borough market has to achieve an income level of, roughly speaking, in the region of 650,000 a year, but the expenditure attached to the borough market is significantly less than that. So you're quite right. If there's a minus before the budget figure, it broadly means that there's a significant income level in there that offsets the expenditure relating to the particular activity.
So the projection is less. So what does that mean? It's not going to cost as much the following year.
Well, what the projection means, if I can just use the Borough Market Hall, Halifax as the example, what we're saying is overall, we need to achieve a budget level, a minus of 572k. To the extent that the projection says we're going to achieve a minus of 403,000, it means that the activity itself is forecast to exceed the budget by 169,000 or overspend. Now, that can be due to additional expenditure or an underachievement of income. That's what it effectively means for each of the activities.
Thank you. And can I just ask about the events, the event and event management? Would that be set to increase? Is there going to be any room for that to increase as, you know, Sowerby Bridge Market is taken out as a structure, and then we're going to have more temporary markets? Would that come under events if we're looking at doing a programme?
Yeah, I think we've mentioned about the historical budget, and Councillor Dacre mentioned the high level of income that we need to achieve, that we need to look at, and the events and management budget. Essentially, there isn't a budget, and what John's had to do in the past is, when he's operated an event, he's had to operate it at a break-even position, and that's why there's no budget shown there in the first column. Now, as you quite rightly mentioned there, as we complete work in various parts of the borough, we want to run events alongside the markets, then we will have to look at, you know, how we manage those events that support the service generally. So, you know, it's historical that there's no budget, but it's another factor or another area that we need to look at within their whole budget, you know, within the market service.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a very interesting point, that last one. So, John?
Yeah, just to clarify Councillor Smith's question, really. Anything taken back to Sowerby Bridge will be part of Sowerby Bridge. It will still have its own budget. It will still have to wash its own face. The event programme is for things like we did with Party in the Park at Crowwood Park, and is currently only forecasted on, because there is only postings on the budget at the moment for staff's time providing those events. The invoices have now been raised, which will wipe out that balance. And so the event programme will cover things like Flavour Fest that we did with Calderdale College, the South Asian Food Festival in the Peace Hall this weekend, Party in the Park, Ripponden Festival, etc. So they all, on the basis there is no budget, and therefore they must wash their face.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think what Paul said, he's right, though, that it's probably something that we are going to have to look at in the future, because it's part of all of these towns is about having more events.
Yeah.
And so if we want that to work, there's going to have to some sort of budget, I think, to help that. We can't always just expect that it's going to, as John said, wash its face. So I think that's...
Can I just come in there, Chair, just in a comment? So we recently did a market at Calderdale College specifically aimed at the Park and Wall Award and how we could incubate businesses. On that event, out of the 40 stalls that we provided, 17 of them were first-time businesses. But we had no budget to put it on, and that was subsidised by our inclusive economy team working together with us. So that may be a route that we have to progress.
Yeah, or the council accepts it has to find a standalone budget. It's to be, I think it's something that can be looked at as part of the overall budget for the markets, I think. Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, I'm not sure whether worth raising this now or whether it would come under a later discussion around the occupancy rate, specifically in Halifax is kind of the one where it's 70%, and that's probably obviously that's my ward as well, so it's something to think about for me. And obviously we've ran the kind of promotion and we've run the Facebook promotions in terms of trying to encourage people to set up traders within Halifax market or other markets. Have we looked at, and again, this may be for later, but have we looked at existing businesses and traders, for example, people running something from home, and actually looking at encouraging, specifically reaching out to people to encourage them to come into the markets?
John, do you want to comment on that one?
That's back to me then. So, sorry, Chair. So basically what we've done, Councillor Thompson, is that we've tried to incubate businesses throughout COVID, if I'm honest. What you tend to find is that the businesses that we're incubating do not want to accommodate to be accommodated in a 6-day operation. A lot of our newer traders have the opinion that they can do the same amount over 2 to 3 days, really. And that's a significant issue. We've even got new traders now that we're putting into the borough market do not want to open the full 6 days. So the council may have to make a decision going forward whether the market opens the full 6 days. Because as you imagine, I have seen, this is possibly, and I shouldn't admit this, but this is possibly the lowest occupancy level I've ever witnessed in my entire life. I mean, up until 6 years ago, we had a waiting list of about 400 people wanting to come into the borough market, and then they suddenly disappeared. And then COVID didn't help. It enabled traders to leave the building because they wanted to retire. It forced some traders into retirement, and we've not replaced them quick enough, really, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? The business about the 6 days a week, because in Todmorden, for instance, since COVID, since we've started opening up again from COVID, lots of the evening bars or small restaurants only open for say 3 days later in the week, and they shut at 9 o'clock in the evening. So it's completely different to how it used to be, and it's not at all clear to me that it's ever going to go back up to those places opening more, because if they can make a living opening 3 or 4 days later in the week, why would they stress themselves by opening 6 days? So I think you're right, John. I think it's one of those things we'll have to look at as we carry on to see whether actually we just have to face up to the fact that things are going to be different permanently in relation to markets and all sorts of other offerings.
Okay, well, Chair, I'll give you an example. We have a trader at Ebden Bridge Market who was previously a full-time employed chef at Oldsworth House. He now does the market because it gives him a better work-life balance and gives him the similar sort of income.
Yeah.
So are we targeting people right? That is what we need to be exploring, really. And you mean, are there avenues that other colleagues in the council have got that we haven't? Because you mean, at the end of the day, we are only a small team, whereas we have got other colleagues in the authority, such as business and skills and inclusive economy team. So I think we need to be working a little bit closer with our colleagues to breed the new businesses, because we've seen some significant successes, really, particularly at Brickhouse, where 2 of the traders have now moved on to vacant high street shops. So, you mean, we have to acknowledge that markets may be only a stepping stone. Therefore, we need a volume of traders to generate our income.
Yeah. Yeah, so I suppose the only other possibility that sprang to my mind was, can you effectively job share a stall so that you have, and would that work, or would everybody want later in the week, and would it be impossible because you couldn't advertise the stall for both of them? Sorry,
we are actually exploring the opportunity in the borough market, but again, you know, when you've got traders with differing trades, not all stalls suit everybody's need. And so that's an area where we need to further investigate, really.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, perhaps an overly simplistic question. So obviously we are, and you know, I know a few of the market traders as well, and I think I think there are, you know, people who are wanting to go into the markets and work say like 11 till 3 a few days a week, because actually it reduces their working life and they're still making a decent living. Does that, so if people are making that decision, are we seeing then an impact on the income from markets? Because, for example, less people are coming in. Is that kind of a direct correlation?
I'll unmute myself. Through Chair, the significant difference we've seen is obviously Ellen Market, where it only trades 1 day a week, yet we've gone from a deficit to a surplus in space of a year. So, I mean, and Ellen for the past decade has operated at a small deficit. So we've seen traders turn up that want to do at least 1 day a week, and some of them we've had the benefit of them moving to Brickhouse. So the likes of Crust and Crumb actually started in a pop-up pizza van with his wood-fired burner on Elland Market. He then moved on to Brickhouse Market to a lock-up unit, and he's now got a restaurant on the high street of Brickhouse. And still retaining his market stall because he don't want to lose that because he knows there's a new development. So it's how we get into these newer traders as we step through these the adversity of COVID, really.
Yeah. Yes, it's sort of quite exciting, but quite challenging at the same time, especially for, as you say, a small team for the markets. Okay, unless anybody else has got anything more on that item, I'll move on to item 7, which is the comms update. I don't know who's here. Is that Natasha?
Yes, hi. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read Karen's communication update report, but I'll now summarise that for you. So first of all, an update around the trader recruitment campaign. We've continued to drive traffic to the new trader recruitment webpage via the following marketing channels. The posters, which you saw last time, featuring current traders, filmed some case studies with, again, current market traders, which we've promoted on social media with both organic and paid for advertising on Facebook. We've seen a particularly high engagement via Facebook and even a lovely comment from an existing trader at the Brickhouse and Elland Markets, Truly Magic Aromas, saying that the markets is how they started and then they've not looked back. So a great endorsement. We've also paid for some digital adverts through the Courier. We had a press release on the 22nd of March to launch the campaign, but unfortunately this wasn't picked up. But we did then go on to have some paid for advertising in the Courier, local directories and magazines. We invested in some out of home advertising, including bus shelters, particularly around Calderdale College and around our local train stations. As a result, looking at our Google Analytics for the web page in question, we saw a big spike in the number of people visiting the web page in April and May particularly, and then some in June. And we believe that that led to direct inquiries through to John. Karen's also mentioned in her communications plan that we have produced an annual plan highlighting promotional opportunities that are running throughout the year. The Love Your Local Markets campaign was supported on social, as was the activity around the Platinum Jubilee. The investment for the Brickhouse market was also picked up by a number of newspapers, including the Courier, which gave us a lovely double page spread, so that was nice, but also the Telegraph and Argos, Yorkshire Post and the Examiner in Huddersfield. We've also agreed with officers to develop the actual overarching markets webpage on the council's website, which will include bringing the Halifax Borough Market website actually in-house to create a brand new landing page, which will actually feature events and an automated social media feed so that our push marketing really leads to an inviting web page with more information. And hopefully, once we have more events, you know, it'll just be a place that we can just push people to really get it inspired to come to our local markets. So that's an overall summary. Happy to take questions, and Karen's here as well, who's very au fait with the detail.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thompson.
Hello, yeah, me again. Apologies, everyone. I'm just looking, so in terms of the social media stuff, and I guess it's something, so for me, also thinking both as, you know, being a counter and campaigning online, and then also previously, you know, being a sole trader, in terms of the kind of organic reach on Facebook, are we doing a lot in terms of like the community groups, so 50 Shades of Halifax, the Brickhouse Banter, all of that? And then further to that, I was wondering if we have kind of any kind of database or contact details for people who we'd like to kind of share things. So for example, like totally locally, or whether it's the Peace Hall, or whether it's the Victoria Theatre, or these institutions within Halifax, whether we have that info so we can say we're going to do this and we get it out to them as well and ask them to go through social media. Because I'm conscious of how expensive it is to actually do paid advertising. So if we can get to that point where actually we can reach more people organically, then we're saving money and probably doing better as well. And that's just, I'm sure we are looking at that, but it'd just be interesting to know, really.
Yeah, happy to pick that up. So we have stuck to our council channels on social media, but I completely understand, if we can get those endorsements from actual traders posting themselves, that would be great. We could explore some LinkedIn and sort of more networking from a business to business rather than sort of business to consumer. And we are, John mentioned earlier that about linking in with business and skills. So somebody in my team, in the comms team, also works in business and skills. And it's something that we are actually working on behind the scenes, linking the people who are interested in startup and actually trying to funnel them through and to markets as a potential option. In terms of the other channels that you've mentioned, it would be probably really useful to liaise with John about perhaps some of our ambassadors on the markets and perhaps have a chat with them about, like you say, what they can help to do for us in terms of organic posts. So I'd be interested to hear from John if there are people out there that are willing to bang the drum, just like the Magical Aromas person who supported the comment on Facebook.
Okay, thank you. So John?
Excuse me about that. I do apologise for not unmuting myself. Just to answer Councillor Thompson's question first in regards to social media, Totally Locally, etc. So I personally have worked with Totally Locally since 2008 and its formation, and we created the concept of Totally Local markets back in 2011, and we constantly try and drive Fiberfest. But the biggest problem we get is trader uptake there, but we could address that one at a later date. We have social media pages on all platforms for every market, more or less, which the service controls rather than corporate comms. And so therefore we get further. So we do the likes of Brickhouse Banter, Brickhouse Oracle. We also do the 50 Shades of Halifax when they permit us to do it, because they always knock us post back, really. And we also use Todd Chat, Todd this and that, and everything. So we are keyed in as a service to the local community groups, and largely through me, really, because that's what I do on an evening in my armchair. And so, we do need, in that concept, and you're right to raise this question, it is a big growth area to promote markets. And we're seeing this with our neighbours in Bradford, really. They have a full-time officer just to do their media advertising, whether that be through social media, through various other forms of marketing. So too of Leeds now, they've got an entire team doing it, and Huddersfield are doing the same. So we just do it from within the service. So we do need to look at this. We also need to explore the fact that markets do need to be underpinned with better promotion, because let's face it, you're never going to see the likes of Sainsbury's, Asda and all that not advertising themselves, are you? And so we really do, you've got to understand that our competition is the retail sector. It's not local government, it is the retail sector. And we need to compete on a level playing field with it, and we're not doing so. But Natasha's right. What are the traders doing as well? So we scoured all their Facebook pages on an evening to try and generate content. But what we've found through going through things, and Natasha said this, is that we've unearthed some stories, and it's right what Councillor Dacker said at the beginning. Markets are more than just obtaining cash for the council, really. They help drive our communities and they help to build business. And one of those, we have a business that's got 2 daughters with mental health issues that they've used the market to deal with that issue. And they've got a successful business grown out of it from 2 markets. So there are lots of things, people getting made redundant and wanting employment opportunities. How are we fulfilling this? Because are we promoting and attaching everywhere? And I'm sure Councillor Dacker will comment on this because are we actually maximising the benefit of Todmorden? Is Todmorden a West Yorkshire market, or does it draw from East Lancashire? And I personally believe it draws from East Lancashire more than it does from West Yorkshire. So how are we getting into East Lancashire? And these are comments that Natasha and I will try and pick up over these next few months to try and drive improved promotion, really.
Yeah, thank you, John. And yes, I think you've raised this point before, either at, I don't know, the previous iteration of the town board, perhaps that Todmorden in particular needs to try to engage more with prospective visitors from outside the borough, from Greater Manchester and Lancashire. Okay, so Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to see if Natasha can give us a bit of an update as to, for the rest of the members, benefit of the working relationship with the bids, because I think they have an important role to play in terms of promoting the markets as well. And I know a lot of work has been taking place in the background, but it doesn't necessarily come across in the report. So I think it would be quite useful for other members to actually hear what was being going on with the bids, if that's okay, please.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm quite new to the council, so I have had conversations with Chloe in Halifax, but to be honest, that's the extent of my conversations. So yeah, I think that there are definite partners that we could utilise and get a better understanding of what's required, for sure.
Chloe does come to our senior officer meeting as well, which is held regularly.
Can I just come back on that in relation to, because we've got, I don't know what the role's called, but is it a community officer that should be working in relation to, from the council's perspective, equally with the markets as well? So I'm not quite sure what their role, because I'm sort of slightly concerned that their role is duplicating what the bid does in certainly in Brickhouse. So I'm just really unclear as to what this person actually are they called ambassadors? I'm not quite sure. My apologies for not knowing the correct title, but they're certainly being employed post-COVID times to actually promote more health and well-being. But equally, they've been doing similar things to what the bid has been doing, as in talking to businesses. And I do think there is a duplication there.
I think this is perhaps something that I need to take up outside the meeting, because I think if Natasha's not familiar with it, and we're not really going to get anywhere. But I've made a note of it. And
thank you, thank you, Chair. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because I was going to ask something similar with the Halifax and maybe the place development officer from the council who's involved, somewhat. But again, kind of a similar question following on from the bids is, yeah, Janet's just said place development officers. So I'm thinking, as well as that, where we are in terms of working alongside like the voluntary community sector as well, whether it's a case of, particularly for events, whether it's a case of getting in local charities and voluntary organisations as well, and saying, we can have, say, for an event, subsidise a stall for a charity, and they come in, and then we look at that as well as kind of a promotion tool as well, because if they're in there, you're getting their trustees or supporters and things like that coming into the market, and then the likelihood is they then spend money and come back to the market. I was just wondering about how kind of linked in we are with the voluntary sector as well.
Is there anybody who feels able to comment on that? Possibly not. I think Councillor Thompson for the same reason. So I think
just to reassure, Chair, we are linked in with the place development officers for sure, and the place development comms officer works within our team and very much supportive on the events that we've been working on this year with the Jubilee and the Let's Grow. So yeah, there are definite connections there. I know our team as well has been helping with the Flavour Fest earlier this year. And in fact, I spoke to the comms officer just this morning about an event that's coming up in September, and sort of suggesting that perhaps we use the people who took part in Flavour Fest and reach out to them to see if they would like to go to a business growth event in September. So that there are things sort of happening on that side, if that helps.
Yeah, thank you. And it will do no harm for me to try and understand how it all fits together anyway. So as I say, I can take that back. So Councillor Robinson and then John.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's an interesting question regarding comms. Like say, Councillor Dake, I think this is one to probably take back and discuss offline. I'd be incredibly interested to know actually who is really responsible for the comms / the marketing, because you've got so many different bodies. You've got the council, you've got the market traders, you've also got the different bids. Who is essentially taking the lead on it, and who's responsible for actually which budget's it coming from, who's coordinating the whole thing. I think that's really important. I suppose from a place development point of view, the council have got a duty to market our markets, but also a bit of onus does the actual market owners, the stall owners, are actually obliged to market themselves if they want to be successful as well. So there is that element. We can't take the whole responsibility for marketing markets when we're not the only stakeholder in the process. The other point is, and it's partly for a wider discussion, but I would also like to see much more power and control given to the stall owners. I'm not sure if this is part of a long-term strategy or a plan for our markets in Calderdale, but the people who know the markets are the stall owners themselves. And if we could in some ways look at a long-term model of giving them more via, I don't know, a market board or something, more control over what they have on there, and also in terms of the comms, I feel like that would be only a recipe for success. That's almost segueing onto a completely different governance topic, but I think it is nonetheless something important. Thank you.
Thank you. John can come in and probably want to say something about that, but I know from talking to John in the past about Todmorden that it can be incredibly difficult trying to give that control to traders, because certainly with the outdoor ones, they may not be there for very long. They move to other things, and trying to get a corporate view, if you like, from traders is not straightforward. And ultimately somebody has to decide what it is that's going to happen. And traders, there's value in what you say, but I just think there can be issues with it. And as I say, John may wish to comment on that.
Just try to address a few points really. So in regards to the bids, I think we've got to realise that the bids will only support those that fund the bids. And market traders that come under a certain rateable value do not pay into a bid, therefore will not be supported by a bid. So we do have to take we have to take the lead there. Whereas, we've recently started work with place development officers, and we've seen some of that success with the Shibden Hall market for the Ann Lister birthday week. And we've also seen some of that success with the Flavour Fest. So hopefully we can build upon that. But going back to Councillor Thompson's question on charitables and volunteers, since 2011, the market service, as you can imagine, has been downsized considerably due to its income generation and to increase the profit levels. So we've had to go into the communities and had to learn to work with things like, our first initial partnership was with Brickhouse Business Initiative, which I'm sure Councillor Blackburn will comment on. But we work with a lot of partners. And going back to the charities, we support over 200 charities a year in regards to giving them facilities to raise funds. So there is scope there as well with the voluntary sector to move on that way. In regards to Councillor Robinson's comments in regards to trader groups, You would never, ever, as a market officer, hand over control of anything to a market trader, really. If I'm honest, I have to be blunt, because they will only look after their own interests. What we do, however, is we try to establish trader groups at each of our venues. And this is typified as your comment, Chair, with regards to Todmorden, where we have a tenants association who can't even agree who's going to be the next secretary, really. So, you know, we have to understand, I mean, the borough market's been split down the middle over opening and closing for the Jubilee. So half of them don't want to talk to the other half now because they opened and we didn't. And Brickhouse are now falling out over the fact that the council permits people to sell second-hand from its market. So the trader groups don't necessarily always have the council's interest at heart, really, whilst we always try to have theirs. So there has to be a blend, but Councillor Robinson's right. You mean there can be better working mechanisms, and we've proven this with Brickhouse, because when the Brickhouse trader group was formed originally, I don't think I'd ever seen as many people on Brickhouse market, if I'm honest, because this showed full well the might and power of what you can do with comms, with a bit of cash given to you from the Welcome Back Fund, and they filled Brickhouse on one single occasion just by their own activity. So it shows there can be success, but it's how we manage it, really.
Okay, thank you. So any more questions on that item? Okay, so at this point, we'll be dealing with item 8 at the end of the meeting, I think, and we'll move to item 9 now, which is the exempt item. So can you please switch the live stream off?
Yes, Chair, if I can just come in for 1 minute. I'm not sure if it's just something I missed, but did we defer the signing of the minutes to the next meeting of this board?
Sorry, what I said was I don't think I can sign them because I wasn't chair then. And when I did the CAFM board for the first time, I was just told not to worry about the minutes because I wasn't there and it will be sorted out. So I'm afraid I don't know what the procedure is.
Right. Okay, at the moment in this meeting, we don't have 2 councillors present who were present at the last meeting. So we'll defer it all. Yes, Councillor Blackberry, you were, and Megan Swift was, and there was nobody else, and Megan Swift isn't here today. So if we defer it to the next meeting, then I'll get confirmation from Kirsty on what happens about the signing. Is that all right?
Yes, that's fine.